All right, we are live once again on Proline TV as we are going to take a look at week number 6 in the NFL, week 7 in college football. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It's the best way to contribute and support the channel here at Proline TV. And of course, you can also hit that thanks icon at the bottom of the screen if you want to donate anything you want to the channel. All right. So hopefully you've been able to make some money with us over the course of the season. And before we get started on college football this week with the SEC, last week was definitely our first hiccup week. And this is a lesson this is something I think is really important. A couple things. First of all, if you follow this particular show, remember, I am not a professional handicapper. That's everybody else. That's Jim. That's Mark. That's Andy. That's Victor. They're all the professional handicappers. I'm the sports producer who loves football. I bet on football, and I have a lot of information to share with you guys each and every week. And that's exactly what I do. And that's the reason why we try to just make sure that you are prepared as best as possible in case, of course, you're just going to be betting whoever you want to bet on. You know, a lot of times you go to handicappers and you're going to pay for their packages. You're going to trust exactly what they're going to go with. Well, that's not what we're doing here on these particular shows. We're just going to inform you the best way that you can. And it's up to you. Go out on your own, do what you need to do, and all that kind of stuff. And so far, we've been very successful this season. I do want to give you a little bit of a look at any time, because I don't know how everybody feels. I mean, I only know how I feel. And whenever you're on a good run and you kind of know that that bad week is coming, and let's say that you follow some of the any handicapper at all. Now, again, I don't know how they are. I don't know what their history is, but this is how I would look at it, because I know how it works with me. That if those first few games, like what happened to me last week, I lose the Thursday night NFL game. I lose, which was okay. It was fair and square. That was just a bad loss. But then all of a sudden, college, that's been the big bread and butter for us this season. All of a sudden in college, this was going to be okay, because once I lost that Thursday game, I was like, all right, well, it's the NFL. I'll deal with it. Let's see what's going to go on. Let's check out college. And sure enough, we had a top game in college on Friday, which was BYU. And the game was a lot closer than I felt it should have been, because West Virginia's offense is terrible. But sure, either way, the fact was BYU had the lead with about 2 minutes to go in the game. And West Virginia brings in this like fourth string quarterback. And he just happens to throw a touchdown pass, a meaningless touchdown pass of about 40 yards. I think it's his first career touchdown pass. And West Virginia backdoor covers. And as soon as that happened, I already knew this is not going to be a good week. I could just tell. And so, again, I don't know if that's normal for a lot of other handicappers. I'm going to talk about that, though, with Mark and Jim and Andy tomorrow on Playbook ATS podcast. I'm definitely going to bring that up, find out, do they have that kind of feeling before a weekend? Because I was on guard. As soon as that happened, I was on guard the entire weekend. And then lo and behold, some of the games, some of the outcomes, exactly what I felt was going to happen. You had Vanderbilt losing the spread on the touchdown run, which was basically like the last play of the game for Alabama from 20 yards out. Keeping in mind that Vanderbilt had the ball in Alabama territory twice in the red zone, turned it over twice, had a 14-7 lead in the game, had a 7-0 lead in the game. At no point in that game should Vanderbilt have lost the cover. At no point until the 20-yard touchdown run at the very end of the game. That is what happens when you have a bad week. Look at Michigan. I had Michigan big to blow out Wisconsin. Game was a lot closer than I thought it should have been, because Wisconsin scored on their first drive, and they made it a little bit harder when you have a big spread to overcome. Well, Michigan overcame it. Wisconsin then kicks a field goal, puts them in good position to cover. But then Michigan marches down the field. They've got the ball inside the red zone. They could have scored if they wanted to. Sharon Moore didn't want to rub it in. They just basically ran the clock out, and that was it. Of course they ran the clock out because I had Michigan. Had I had Wisconsin in a bad week, Michigan, like Alabama, would have scored a touchdown. So there are a few other circumstances like this that occurred, and those are the things that happen. But which you should never do, ever. And we talked about this last week, is chase the money. And that's the reason why detecting if you're going to have a bad week early is very important. Or just a week that, I mean, it wasn't like the week was like 2-16. It was just that we were doing so well that even if we had like a 500 week or 2 games under 500, that's a bad week. And you just have to detect it as early as possible so you can make sure that you limit the amount of funds that goes out because you just aren't sure. And hey, what's the worst thing that can happen is you still win, but you just don't win enough. Hey, I'd rather have that kind of foresight and understand how I feel that I'm going to go into a week based on the first few days, Thursday, Friday, sometimes even earlier in the week, depending on what other sports you do. I don't do any other sports. So, but anyway, next time you see that, next time you see like a Wednesday or a Thursday beat from some of the games that I specifically do, watch out. Watch out the whole week. But that's okay because we're going to get right back to it. And I know we're going to have a really good week this week. There's a lot of games that we like in college football, so let's get right to it. Interesting enough, not any of those games are in the SEC. Now, I like some games in the SEC, but there's not a lot of games in which I look at and I go, yeah, I love this one. Starting with Alabama and Missouri. I like Missouri in this one. Why not? They were one of my sleepers like Vanderbilt, but I'm also a little bit wary about this one because Vanderbilt was beaten as an undefeated team last week by the same Alabama team, who was my prediction to be in the semifinals this year of the national of the playoffs. And they're certainly looking like they may be able to do that. And here's my second sleeper team following Vanderbilt, 5-0, same situation as Vanderbilt. And so obviously I'm a little bit gun shy in this one, especially since the line is low. There's really no value now in taking Missouri, at least with Vandy. I had a big spread to cover. I had a good money line. I thought it was very smart to go down that road. And I still do. Just because you lose doesn't mean it was a bad play. It was the right play. Sometimes you lose. For Missouri, they're a 5-0 dog. That's a good place to be in. Those are really good, even though Vandy, not good. Okay. Again, forewarned. 8-3 against the spread as a home dog under Drinkwitz. So this is normally a good spot for this particular program under Drinkwitz. Keep in mind, Missouri has never beaten Alabama at home. All right. Never beaten Alabama at home. This is as good as a time as any to get the job done. But there's a couple of good numbers that go on Alabama's side. They have covered 9 straight when they take on a team off a straight-up ATS win, and 11-1 against the spread. Actually, let me make sure that I've got the right one. Actually, I think I'm going with Missouri here on this. That's right. I drew the long line in my. See, I had my notes. I usually have like 2 games here, a lot of information here, a lot of information here, but I had so much information that my information up here with Bama and Missouri, I needed another line. Anyway, and I drew that line because that was actually from Missouri. Missouri has covered 9 straight when they take on an opponent off a straight-up ATS win, and Missouri is 11-1 against the spread as a home dog when they're in a revenge situation. So those are pretty solid. Throw in the 5-0 dog, 8-3 home dog under Drinkwitz. There's a lot to like there. DeBoer is only 2-5 against the spread as a road favorite with Alabama. We know what happened in week 1 at Florida State. They shut out Missouri last year 34-0. So speaking of revenge, we know that's as good as it's going to get if they want to take on a team and get the job done. But look, what's more likely? That one-loss Alabama loses for a second time, and they still got a really tough schedule ahead. And to lose one more game, they may be knocked out, or undefeated Missouri finally loses a game. You know where that is. I kind of feel that same way too. I really like the way Alabama is playing as well. Their confidence is sky high. So that's why, like I said in the very beginning, even though I like Missouri, I just don't think I'm getting any value to go down that road. The same thing here is to be a great game, Texas and Oklahoma, but nobody really knows what to expect here because of Hawkins, the quarterback, is going to be making his second start after the start last week. Look, that was not an impressive start against Kent State. And we're going to talk about Kent State later. Not an impressive start. Throw in the fact that Hawkins was the starting quarterback last year when Texas destroyed Oklahoma in this game. All right. Now, you can look at it two ways. Positive, hey, he had some experience. He knows what it's like. It's his second year. His first game this year, last week, was solid. Nice little tune-up. And he's going to be better for it. The bad side is he's not a top recruit. You saw what you had last year, which is the whole reason that you spent big money to get Mateer in here. And really, if you wanted Hawkins to play, you just hope that he'd play against teams like Kent State, not this game. This is not what they wanted. But Oklahoma's coming in with the best defense in college football, and we know Texas is having a lot of problems on offense. Baxter, I thought, was going to play last week. He didn't. I'm guessing that's because he was close to playing. Wisner did play, and they decided, all right, look, we got one of our running backs back. Let's just save Baxter for the big game next week. Because if Baxter doesn't play, I just have a hard time believing that Texas is going to be able to move the football a lot. And unless there's a ton of turnovers from Hawkins causing, points for Texas, all that kind of stuff, usually these are games that go over. Last year, it didn't because of the awful offense that Oklahoma had. If Mateer was playing, this would definitely be an over situation. But because it's not, it's probably another under situation. I'm not a total guy, but I don't expect this to be a high-scoring game unless turnovers are the cause for points. So I don't know. I'm just going to stick with the team that has a ton of confidence right now in Oklahoma. It's just hard for me to take Oklahoma when it's Hawkins against Arch Manning. Hence, I don't really like the game a whole lot. I don't know which way to go. So, okay. Arkansas, Tennessee. We have a new coach, Bobby Petrino. I'm not an Arkansas fan, and let them to be the judge of whether or not Pittman should have been fired at this point in the season. But keep this in mind: he was not he's not a player, and the players were the ones that were turning the ball over late in games. As a coach, he was doing a really good job getting this team in situations to win these games, especially on the road at Ole Miss. He's got Ole Miss. They're marching down the field. And what do? Interception, game over. Memphis, they're about to run the ball. Memphis can't stop them. They're just yards after yards. They're about to punch it in. Running back fumbles. And then what do you expect is going to happen when right after that you play Notre Dame, who's already got a couple of losses and cannot afford another one? So there's no way that Notre Dame is going to go down against Arkansas. You know that we talked about that big time a couple of weeks ago, and he blew out and annihilated Arkansas, and then that man Sam Pittman's fired. So I look, I know it had a lot more to do with a lot more behind the scenes, but when you have Bobby Petrino on the sidelines, I think that's the reason that they made the move. They want to see, can Bobby Petrino be the guy so we can make the decision at the end of the year whether we need to hire him as head coach. I think that's the reason that it was made, that they just said, well, look, the season's over. We're not going to win an SEC championship. Sure, maybe we go to a bowl, and that's fine. And Pittman's done that in the past. But if we're trying to get to the next level, we need to find out if Bobby Petrino is the best guy to do that. Let's give him the keys to the engine. We've done it before. He's been successful here in the past, and that's the reason it was made. Now, what do? Well, here's the thing. There's a couple of games with big numbers and big upset possibilities this week that I think you should just go ahead and go all in, because you don't have to worry about it being a big investment. This is one of them. Arkansas is 4-1 on the money line. Now, I think one of two things are going to happen. The players, like me, when I was bringing up, I don't know if Sam Pittman's the one that you should really be blaming here. Okay, all right, fine. then if the players are feeling like that as well, if the locker room feels like that, hey, this Bobby Petrino guy, man, he just circumvented our coach, and well, you're going to have a mutiny kind of deal for at least a week or so, and they're going to get annihilated in Tennessee. All right, that can happen. Got that. Keep in mind, Arkansas has been outgained by every. Keep in mind that Arkansas, and this is another reason why I wasn't sure that Pittman did a bad job. But before the Notre Dame debacle, Arkansas was outgaining every team they played. So they were playing well. They were put in positions to win, but the players have got to be the ones on the field to make the play. So that's why I think normally this would be a game that you would say, hey, you know what? All right, let's say they just lose to let's say they win those two games against Ole Miss and Memphis, and then they play Notre Dame and they lose by 14 points. Well, this would be a game that I'd be all over Arkansas in this spot. But again, now you're going to go down the road of, all right, now I got to think of, are the players not really going to handle this very well? And if not, this could be ugly and I just wasted a few bucks. Or you could look at the other way. Bobby Petrino's taking over. They understood what went on with Pittman, and they feel responsible because I think they are. They feel responsible, and they're okay with Petrino as the coach. Matter of fact, they're kind of excited about it. They know his resume, and they've had a week to prepare to get ready for this one. And hey, we're going to come out there, and we're going to play just like we did before, except hopefully not turn the ball over in key spots, and try to see if we can pull out an upset here. So I think look, that's why I think it can go either way. It can go, hey, we've outgained every opponent pretty much until Notre Dame. We're going to play like that in this one at Tennessee, and or we're mutinizing. And I think that because there's a little bit of a gamble there, and I'm not talking about taking the 12 points, obviously, I'm talking about just going in on the money line at 4-1. I think it's worth it. The Big Ten has another game. We're going to go over that later. Florida and Texas A&M. This is a tough one because Florida had the big win last week against Texas. And we don't know whether or not it was a 1-week deal because the offense for Florida had been pretty bad until last week. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they've kind of, they come off the bye and they're kind of, they're headed in the right direction. Texas A&M, though, has played tremendous football. They have won and outgained all of their opponents, including Notre Dame on the road. They've also done the last two by a 448.5 to 198 margin. That's Auburn and Mississippi State. So basically, they've outgained their last two opponents by about 900 to 400. So they're playing, and this was after the Notre Dame win. So they're obviously playing. Their confidence is at an all-time high. They're playing great football, but they're undefeated. So you got to watch out. They were a 5-0 undefeated team. That might, and they got a team like Florida coming in, knowing that they still maybe have a little bit of hope that they can salvage their season. So this is going to be a really, really tough one to call. I can see Texas A&M winning a close game, which is why, again, it's just a game that I really don't have a big say on. But that's kind of what I believe will happen. I think Texas A&M wins, but it'll be a close game. I just don't want to bet against Texas A&M right now because they have pretty much answered every call at this point. And it's at home. Georgia, Auburn, and another tricky game. I side with Georgia here, though, just for a little bit because it's only 3. I know there's a lot of people talking about, Hugh Freeze. Does he need to win this game to save his job? And I don't see why that's the case. I mean, look, everybody wants to have your team rebuild. New coach comes in overnight. Let's get this thing going. Hasn't happened that way so far. I'm sure the fans wanted it to be a lot quicker, which is why he might be on the hot seat. And maybe he is. I don't know. It's only the SEC home opener for Auburn. That's how early in the season it is. So even if they lose this game, I could look at the schedule and say that they could still be a bowl team. And in the SEC, after what happened last year, if you can get to a bowl, it's a start. Okay, because remember, he had no quarterbacks the first couple of seasons. The quarterback play was terrible. Defense, excellent. Quarterback, awful. The defense is still good, But, the quarterback is just a little bit better. But the quarterback isn't that much better. Now, I don't think Gunnar Stockton is miles ahead of Jackson Arnold, but he is a better quarterback than Jackson Arnold. Georgia's defense has been an issue, yes, but their run defense has not. And I think that's important because Auburn can only run the ball. They can't throw the football. As we saw in the Texas A&M game, even when guys are open, and they have receivers. They got some good receivers, Auburn. And when these guys are open, Jackson Arnold can't get the ball to them. I mean, he's throwing the ball all over the place. So I don't think Georgia has anything to worry about there. You should keep in mind now that the Bulldogs are 4-8-1 as a road favorite against the spread since 2023. That one was the tie earlier this year against Tennessee. And Auburn has outgained 3 of their 4 FBS opponents. And just checking something out. And so it shows you that even though the offense has not really taken off yet, with the better quarterback, they are still in these games. These are still good games, a play here, a play there. Same thing I could expect on a Saturday night against Georgia, but the Bulldogs just look like a better team. This is going to be a tricky one. LSU and South Carolina. This is a 3-1, almost a 3-1 on the money line. The number has gone down just slightly. LSU has had their bye week, which is important because they've had all sorts of offensive line issues, as we've been saying here for the past couple of weeks. This is the main reason why their offense hasn't really been able to get going. But overall, if you look at it, they are still a talented team. They got talented receivers. They've got a talented quarterback, running game. The defense is much better this season, and it's been in the last couple of years. There's a lot to like that if they can regroup here somehow and find the right combinations on the offensive line and maybe just get this offense going, that this can be a national championship contender. Right now, I just have a hard time believing that based on the way that the offense has been playing. But we'll see. That's why this first game off the bye is a little bit tricky, especially since Sellers has played a little bit better over the last couple of games after the rough start. The Gamecocks have covered 5 straight as a road dog. They're 1-0 in that spot this year when they covered against Missouri. And check this out. Brian Kelly, when he is the coach with LSU in home night games, is 14-1 straight up. That's pretty impressive. LSU, meanwhile, 12-2 against the spread their last 14 SEC games as a home favorite of 12 or less. They're 1-0 in that spot this year. So another tough game that I just don't have a big feel for, which is why I said at the beginning, there's a lot of games I like this week. There just aren't any that are coming from the Big Ten. Okay, let's talk about the Big Ten, or let's come from the SEC. Now let's talk about the Big Ten. And here's a game right off the bat that I like, and that is Rutgers getting 10.5, so I can get 11 in this one. I'm getting 3-1 on the money line. A few reasons why I like this one. Washington, and there's a lot of teams in the Big Ten and the Pac-12, the Big Ten that are East Coast teams and West Coast teams, and because of the new, Washington, UCLA, USC. So you get these West Coast teams in there now, and with the schedules, you got to keep an eye that there are a lot of situations where you're seeing, especially if they've got these West Coast teams on their schedule, you're seeing these home away, home away, home away. So keep an eye on that because Washington's going through that right now. Okay, a couple of weeks ago, they're at the West Coast at home against Ohio State. The very next week, they go travel all the way east, which was last week, to play Maryland. Big down early, 20-0, come back, win the game 24-20. Now, this week, they come back home, West Coast, to play Rutgers, and it's on a short week. Okay, so they're making that zigzag. Now they're doing it east to west, short week. Okay, Rutgers, meanwhile, did not play last week. So Rutgers doesn't have that travel situation. Yeah, they got to go to the West Coast. That's an issue as well for East Coast teams. We see it all over. I bring it up every week. But that doesn't mean that they all lose. Look at Duke. Duke, had a pretty easy game last week at Cal. But it does happen. Rutgers, though, and I think this situation, it shouldn't concern them because of the bye. So I think this is a good situation for them. Throw in the fact that most of this has been with Greg Schiano. 10-1-1 against the spread coming off a week off. So when Greg Schiano has time to prepare to get his team ready to play after a week off, he does it. Also, Rutgers 5-1-1 against the spread as a road dog since last year. 1-0 in that spot. Remember, we liked them last week 2 weeks ago against Minnesota. They covered that. They probably should have won that game. Of course, if you watch the game, you might have seen what happened. Matter of fact, keep this in mind. Rutgers has played 2 Big Ten games so far. They've outgained both teams, losing both. It's because their defense isn't very good. But they've also had their opportunities on offense, which is why if this was, even with that defense, if they had an offense like a juggernaut offense, like an Oregon offense, one of the top offenses in college football. In other words, if they had a electrifying quarterback, receiver, running back, all of that stuff, offensive line, they would just top 5 offense in the country. Well, they would have found a way to beat Iowa and have found a way to beat Minnesota. But as good as their offense has been, it's still not at that level. It's very good for Rutgers standards. They could score a lot of points. They could score close. I don't know what their points totals are, but it's pretty high as far as what are they? 18th in points in the country. Okay, so that's pretty impressive. But they do stupid things like on the drive against Minnesota when it looks like they're about to again, they pretty much, if you're watching the game, you felt, all right, they got the ball, a couple minutes to go. They're going to either, worst case scenario, they're going to kick a field goal. I think it was a 3-point game at the time. I think so. Kick a field goal, go to overtime, or score a touchdown and force Minnesota to do something. And what happens? The center exchange. Shotgun, the center, I don't know what he threw the ball. I don't know if it was over Kalakamannis' head or wherever it was, but it cost them like 15 yards. And that was it. They could not get a lot closer. They had to kick a 58-yard field goal attempt that the guy missed. And that's what happens when you just aren't making the right plays at the right time. And that's what happened to Rutgers there. Okay. Keep in mind, too, that they still have one of the top 2, statistically speaking, wide receiver duos in the country, and Ian Strong and KJ Duff. That could definitely is a reason why they're able to keep in these games. For Washington, we know they're a talented team. I said this at the beginning of the season. They were a nice little sleeper to do some damage, not necessarily to win the Big Ten, but to be that second wave, and they've proven that. The game against Ohio State, it was a pretty decent game for them. They just couldn't do anything offensively in that game. The defense did keep them in it. Are they a better team than Rutgers? Yeah, I kind of think Washington is. Because Rutgers has too many injuries on the offensive line, the defensive interior, and that just exposed them, which is the reason why you see the team you're seeing right now. But we're talking 10 points. I told you about the scheduling situation, and that's why I think they are a pretty good dog in this spot. All right. Here's another game that I think is a good game as far as the dog. Illinois is getting 14. Interesting. It started 14, went to 16, back to 14.5. Not sure what that's all about. Ohio State has covered 7 out of the last 9. They've won 8 straight against Illinois, including 11 straight in Champaign. Illinois, meanwhile, they have one bad week, and I think they're just being judged completely differently. Yes, the defense could be better. I get that, but a lot of the statistics are definitely about the one bad week. Can they be better? Yes, over the season. But the offense has also shown the ability to be pretty good. They got a solid veteran quarterback, and they're well coached. This is a 5-1 team. This is a team that's 4-1 against the spread. They're just playing a team that's 5-0 and 3-0-1 against the spread. But still, I think this is a live dog. I think this is one of those situations that you should see in a pretty tough game. I think we're going to find out even a lot more about Ohio State's offense in this one. We know how good the receivers are. I'm talking about saying the quarterback and the running game. Donaldson's nice and all that. I just don't see blowout here. I just don't. Illinois is 8-1-1 against the spread. Their last 10 at home against opponents with a win percentage of 750 or higher. They're 1-0 in that spot this year. That's because they just upset USC last week. So I am taking Illinois in this one, and I'm not going to go with the double-digit money line play, But I think this could be a close game. I think this could be a full quarter game. I think Ohio State's due for one. Yeah, after what UCLA did last week, I can't see that they're going to be able to respond here. The line's gone up to 8.5. Also, this is a 9 a.m. kickoff for UCLA. The good news for the Bruins is they're 6-1 against the spread as a road dog in their last 7. They covered against Northwestern too a couple of weeks ago. And Michigan State is 0-5 against the spread as a home favorite under Jonathan Smith in year 2. So that's probably why I'm staying away from this one in the Big Ten. But Michigan State's a better team. UCLA has got to have a major hangover after what happened last week, which is probably why that line has jumped up. All right, now here you have a great game between Oregon and Indiana, and I'm taking Oregon in this one. I'm going to go ahead and give the 7. Indiana, I think the game against Iowa, even though they had to come down, which they did after the blowout against Illinois, but that game was too close for comfort, and that's Iowa. That was a game that Indiana, if they want to be considered a national championship team, you just can't do that with Iowa's one-dimensional team. And Iowa's, the defense is always going to be good, but it's not as good as it was last year. They don't have the same talent. Yeah, very strange that Indiana actually only won that game by one score. That was not what I expected. And because of that, I look at this Oregon team. They've pretty much looked as good as even last year's team. And that's pretty scary considering how young their skill position players are. Quarterback, redshirt sophomore. You look at their tight end, who is considered right now maybe the top tight end prospect in college football. Sadiq, redshirt sophomore. True freshman wide receiver. True freshman running back. I mean, it is amazing how much talent this team lost. And they're bringing all these young guys in. And so far, so good. So until they have that bad game, then I say go with them. It's a home game. It's a tough environment for a team like Indiana to play in. And remember, at this point, Cignetti is 0-2 so far in this spot. Road dog. We saw it last year. This is the first roll this year. We'll find out if they're a better team this year. I still don't know if they are. I mean, I think the only question that we said yes was because they blew out Illinois. Okay, we're going to find out for sure in this game if they're better than last year's team. I know they've got a better quarterback. I know that. That's a fact. And they have 2 excellent receivers. I get that, but they had the same thing last year at receiver. It's just that, are they a complete better team this year? We're going to find out on Saturday. I believe Oregon is the way to go here, minus the 7. Here's that other game I was talking about, just like the Arkansas game. All right, so this is one of those situations where I think Penn State, you can look at this in one of 2 ways. I think we're going to see this happen on Saturday or the rest of the season. Is Penn State is either going to win this game big, as soon as the kickoff, and they are going to be a completely different team, sort of like what we saw with Ohio State last year. Everybody gave up on Ohio State day. It's over for them. We're going to have some big changes here. But they had the playoff system, which we didn't have before, or else he might be gone. We wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing so far this year with Ohio State either. But that's not what happened. Playoffs, everything changed, win a national championship. Can Penn State do that? Well, obviously, if they run the table, they can, because they still have to play Indiana and Ohio State. You win those games, you can still win the national championship. Is this the first game that they're going to show you that could happen? We will see. But there's also a possibility that the other happens. And last week's loss and the loss before that to Oregon, these were just the little indications. And even since the beginning of the season, remember all the games that they played against these cupcakes. That's terrible scheduling, by the way. When you're a national championship type team, you shouldn't be playing cupcake after cupcake after cupcake. It's too many cupcakes because they obviously weren't prepared to play Oregon. It took them a while. And then when they got going in the second half, they almost won the game. Remember, there was a big turnover. That was a 14-point swing potentially, at least a 10-point swing potentially as well. All right, that was huge. And they had to lead in overtime. Remember that too. They had to lead in overtime. So they came back. All right, Normally, if this was a few years ago, or 5 or 7 years ago, I think they just blow out UCLA the next week. But it's not. It's what, year 11 or something like that for Franklin? Been there, done that. And I think there's a lot of, especially since what we've seen so far from this season overall, just a lot of maybe doubt that it's over. It's over for Franklin. It's done. Quicker everybody just forgets it and we can move on, the better. But if they beat Northwestern this week and cover the spread, well, nobody's going to say that. They're going to say, hey, maybe we can come back here and let's go. But if it is over, if that locker room is done, the Rojas injury was big, no question, leader in that linebacking core. If this team is done, the Northwestern is more than capable. Braun has had big upset wins since he's been there. More than capable. If UCLA can do it, that team can do it as well. All right, so watch out for Northwestern. I think taking Arkansas and Northwestern as double-digit money line plays, that's what I'm going to do. I can just hit one of them. And I'm going to have a couple of the double-digit plays in there. Rutgers is a double-digit play for me. So I'm going to throw in maybe 4 or 5 of those. And if I can just hit 1 or 2, I'm in really good shape. So I think that's the way to go. Take the chance. And look, 22 as well. Why not? Because that's a lot of points for a team that offensively has not looked the part. Okay. Let's see. Next up. Oh, David. Yes, David's talking about Michigan. Yeah. Well, keep this in mind because I do agree with that. I mean, there is the potential for a look ahead. But what I think of is I think it's one of those things, though, where when you struggle like they did last week against Maryland, I don't think there's that excuse anymore because you've played that game already. You've kind of already let down the hangover after the Ohio State game. So you've kind of had to have learned your lesson by now. So you come back, you have a big win. I think if you let that happen again, and you're not just a very good team then, if you just keep letting that happen. So if it didn't happen against Maryland, I would be more alert to something like that. I'm not saying that can't still be a factor because of the fact that you do come back, you get the big win, you're a double-digit favorite and all that. But what's also, I think, important, if you want to take Washington and believe that Washington can cover this, they did lose at Rutgers last year. So I think that, look, there were a lot of players that were in that game last year. So I don't see that really happening as much as I would believe it if they didn't. If they would have just beat Maryland from start to finish, all that kind of stuff, and then they home and looking forward to Michigan next week, I could see that. But I don't think that's going to happen. That's just my guess. All right, now here's Nebraska and Maryland. I like Nebraska this one. I know it's 6. It was only 4. So I liked them a lot better when it was 4. It's the first true road game of the year for the Huskers, so I am a little bit concerned with that. But Maryland, look, they had a pretty easy schedule to start the season, and not many people expected a lot. They have a true freshman quarterback, so they finally play a good team. They got off to a great start, as we talked about with Washington, and they blew it. So I think there has to be a little bit of a hangover and a confidence hangover after that. You get up to, they believe maybe they're better than they are. Oh, we're about to go 5-0. Look how great we are. And then reality sets in. They're just not that talented. Also, throw in the fact that they have a young quarterback. So Nebraska's got the quarterback edge. And I'm a little bit weary of it's a lot of points on the road, that sort of thing. But I don't know. I'd be surprised if Nebraska had to fight tooth and nail to win this game. I could see this being like a 2-score win for Nebraska, or maybe 8-point win even if we have to go down that road. But I just think they're a better team, and I have no problem giving up 6. Now, here's a game where I'm definitely on top of with Iowa, and I don't know how many times I have to keep ripping this Wisconsin situation, but we all know that it's the end. They're going to be looking for a new head coach. Forget about what happened last week. Michigan just basically, when they needed to win the game, they did. They're going to be it looks like they're going to be playing their third string quarterback again this week. They're just not good offensively. They have a good front. They always do. But overall, it's just not good enough, especially on offense. They got nothing to show for on offense. They got no game breakers. So now they're playing like a carbon copy of themselves, but a program that's in much better shape, much better coaching, and much better confidence. And I only have to give basically 3 points in this game. Look, if you want to take the money line, and I would definitely advise that as well. If you like to take these types of money lines, do it. Because as we all know with Iowa's, weak offense, you don't want to win like a 12-10 game. But I just can't see Iowa losing this game. They've beaten Wisconsin the last 3 years by an 81-26 margin, and I don't expect that to change on Saturday night. Here is a big one. Speaking of Michigan and USC, I actually thought Michigan was going to be favored by a couple of points in this game. So when I saw USC was the favorite, I decided to jump all over Michigan in this spot. I just think that Michigan, and I said this last week, Michigan has remedied what was the problem early on against Oklahoma. And they realized that if they're going to win this year, they've got to respect their freshman quarterback Underwood more. If they had better receivers, they probably would respect them even more to begin with. And I get it. They want to run the ball. They want to establish the line of scrimmage. But again, as we said last week, they don't have that type of power offensive line that they can do that. They can still run the ball, but they can't just run it down your throat power-wise. They have to figure out creatively different ways to get the running game going. And Justice Hayes is one of the best running backs in the nation. So they've got that going for them. We know USC's talented. We know they got a decent quarterback. They've got excellent receivers. They've got a really good running back in Wayman Jordan, who most people don't know who he is. But I just like this matchup better for Michigan because I just think they're a better program right now. USC has just failed repeatedly to take that next step under Lincoln Riley. And and what that means is beat Illinois last week. Show us that you've taken that next step, and they just couldn't do it. So I think that we're in a situation here where it's a couple of good teams going up against each other. And I don't think I have a lot of hope that USC, if they win this game, can necessarily take the next step. But we'll see, because to me, that would mean that Michigan is just not going to be as good as I think they can be, because they're definitely challenged. The offensive line, as I said, has had their share of problems. And again, they've lost some talent like a lot of other teams have. But remember, their offense last year was terrible. And they still found a way by the end of the season to beat Ohio State, beat Bama in the bowl, and salvage something because they're a well-coached program. And they're stable. There's confidence there. There's an aura there. Trust me, I know as a fan. So I think that Michigan is the clear team out of the two that if they win this game, they can keep improving down the road, make the playoffs, and make things interesting. They're not a national championship team. Okay? They're just not. If they had better skill position players, I think they'd have a shot. Even with a little bit of a suspect offensive line, which is not normal at Michigan, I think they could. But unless a younger receiver pops up, maybe a freshman who hasn't played yet or something like that and takes over, I just don't see it. McCulley's a nice player, but he's, and Morgan's okay, but there's no game breakers there. And that's why I think, but they have a really good defense. They can still put, yards on the ground, control the line of scrimmage to an extent. Should be a good game. I'm not saying Michigan's going to win this game easy. I just think that when it all comes down to it, I'd rather take the program that is used to winning games like this, sort of like what Michigan did a couple of weeks ago at Nebraska. Okay. And then here's the last one in the Big Ten. And this is actually going to be one of the upset plays for me. I'm taking Purdue. Why not? I didn't respect Minnesota a couple of weeks ago against Rutgers. And again, Rutgers outgained them, should have beat them. And I think, look, Rutgers is better than Purdue. But I think Barry Odom has done a solid job so far with this team. And they're at least competitive. And now they're playing a team that's vulnerable. So I could see this one being really down to the fourth quarter, last team has the ball kind of deal. And as for I think taking a dog would be a smart play. You get 9 here. You get close to 3-1 on the money line. And check this out. The dog in the series has won outright 6 straight times in the last 7 years. Outright. Purdue's a dog. And it's one of those deals where I like Purdue. I see that trend, and I'm like, oh, I love them then. Anyway, they're 14-1 as well against the spread as Big Ten road dogs of 6 or more coming off a double-digit loss. So I am taking, and Minnesota 0-4 against the spread this year. So I love the points, +9, and I say go ahead, jump on Purdue in the money line as well. Let's go to the ACC. Where are we? Here we are. All right. Now we got some good games here in the ACC. Here's one to start with. Pittsburgh. Mason Heinschel, the true freshman quarterback, takes over last week in their blowout win against Boston College. And you know what? The kid looks good. I was looking at it and I was going, this guy's got to be a 4-star. He's a 3-star. I mean, where are these people coming up with these rankings? The kid was a high school player a year ago. And you're telling me, based on what I just saw last week, the way this kid looks, he's got good size. He's got a good arm. He looks like a competent, good quarterback, college quarterback with really good upside. I mean, he's not taking over for Holstein if he's going to be some weak kid. Holstein's a talented player. He's made some really good plays and had been really last year was a lot better. Obviously, he got replaced for a particular reason, but this Heinschel is a really good young quarterback. Now he's got to go on the road. I get it. That is a big ask, no question about it. But Pittsburgh's now got a little bit of hope that they could do something when you bring in this fresh young quarterback, and you throw in the fact that Florida State, after now losing a second straight time and turning balls over again, and just, you already, they lost the game against Virginia and they were already saying, oh, Norville's job's on the line. It's like they just beat Alabama to start the season. They lose one game to a team that's a good team on the road, and it went down to, overtime, and you want to fire the guy already. Yes, they lost to Miami. Not a good loss the way that it happened. I get it. There was a lot more expected. I thought that they were going to win the game myself. But then again, as we also noted last week, we really didn't know what we had, because when they upset Alabama, they had a whole offseason to prepare. And they just don't get that luxury once the season starts. And Miami's a pretty good team, as we know, and maybe even better than we thought. So Florida State now with a lot of doubts, like, they're hearing the Mike Norville stuff. They are. And so they're hearing that. There's a lot of uncertainty now. These are 2 ACC losses now. Okay. Florida State, for the most part, at this point in time, probably realizes that their season's over. That if we were any good, well, we would have beaten Virginia and been more competitive against Miami. Now, what they can do is run the table, get to the ACC championship game if they can. With 2 losses, it's going to be hard. And they still have that sort of shot. Hey, you can try to convince, but I just think there's too much doubt in that locker room right now, meaning I think they're vulnerable here. So that's the whole reason I said that. I think now now look, the freshman quarterback, 2 freshmen playing on the road, Tallahassee, all that stuff could be too much to ask. But I just think these are the spots I'm looking for when you're looking for upsets, especially double-digit upsets. I want a story. I want to plant the story in my head and say, how can it happen? I think I have a story. This is how it can happen. Is that they kind of feel the season's over now. Yeah, we can go to a bowl. We'll be better than last year. We'll make the season nice and we'll still play some meaningful games. But all of the dreams we had a couple of weeks ago about being maybe national champions is gone. And now, do I really think that's the case? Yeah. But I'm sure there's some other people that believe that they can get back into it. But keep it in mind, Tommy Castellanos is a quarterback. Okay. All he ever is for this team was a holdover until they can bring in either pay and bring in I'm sure they'll find the money, or they're more than capable of finding a top prospect quarterback. We've seen Florida State do that over and over again. But national championship quarterback Tommy Castellanos, I don't think so. This should be a blowout. Same. I'd be a little bit weary here because Georgia Tech has played a couple of close games this year. They really shouldn't. It's a lot of points. I'd probably stay away. I like Wake in this game because how can you know how I feel about Oregon State. And the funny thing is they have outgained, I think, half of their opponents this year, but they just don't know how to win games. They're going to be getting rid of their coach, as we said. I know they will. There's no way they're bringing him back. And Dickert is doing a really good job with Wake. They just had a big win at Wake last week as a 6-point road dog. So, yeah, I think Wake should be the play here. Do I have anything on Wake here? Let me see. I do. How about this? Wake is 13-0-1 against the spread when they take on an opponent off back-to-back straight-up losses. That's pretty big. You know who Oregon State plays next week? Lafayette. You know what that means? Hey, we can win a game. This is a homecoming, so maybe that'll get Oregon State going. Clemson. See, we hit Clemson last week. It wasn't all losses. So Clemson just annihilated North Carolina last week. We thought that they could do that after the bye, correct themselves. They did. We had a conversation with Kornblut from Tucker. Had that conversation out of the gate, like the old Clemson, getting big, putting all the pressure in opposition. And so what they do, first play of the game, 75-yard touchdown. First 22 plays, 35 points. That's the old Clemson way. They've also beaten Boston College, their opponent here, 12 straight times. But 14 points is a lot, and I get that. Bill O'Brien's got a lot of work to do here at Boston College. It's going to take more than a couple of years, obviously, to change this program around because he's got some problems at 0-4 against the FBS this year. So, I just think this is the wrong time for Boston College, the way they've been playing, to take on Clemson coming off that big win. Now, look, if it could go all bad for Clemson and they just get themselves in a close game again, maybe blow it, and then you look back and they go, oh, it was just 1 week. Or they annihilate Boston College and get right back into being a sleeper in the ACC. I don't think they can do it, though, because I can't see them being able. They're not catching Miami. They don't play Miami. And it's going to be hard for them to catch Georgia Tech, who they lost to, meaning that the only way they can get to the ACC championship game is if they were to get into like a 3-way tie with Georgia Tech, meaning they lose 2, and then they get another team in there with them. And then somehow they're the team that gets picked. I don't know how that works in the ACC. Everybody's different. And unfortunately, they just don't have enough big games in order to get to the playoffs with 3 losses. Okay, next up, Big 12. And some more good games to choose from. And let's start with the top, with our boys from Cincinnati, another good game that we picked last week. All right, so Cincinnati had the big win against Iowa State. Matter of fact, they led 31-7, and that game had to go down to the closing minutes. But they have a Central Florida opponent that's definitely not on par with Iowa State. That's why it's 10. Look, we know how much better Cincinnati is over Central Florida so far this season. Last time Central Florida was actually the only road game they had this year. They lost by 14 at Kansas State. Cincinnati is, more than capable of doing the same thing or more. I kind of get the feeling that Cincinnati is due for a breather kind of win, like they should have had last week. So maybe if they get off to a 31-7 start this week, they won't lose that. That's why I think Cincinnati is probably a pretty good play again. Houston should be a really good play just because Oklahoma State's terrible. Iowa State's a good play here. It's only 3 now. I don't know why it's only 3. I thought 4 was fair. I thought, even 5 or 6 is good. Yes, Colorado is dangerous at home. I get that. Colorado has, and get this, they have led the last 2 games they've played 14-0 and lost them both. So you tell me where their confidence is right now. It's not very good. Now, what has worked for them is that they're 5-1 against the spread as a home dog under Dion, including 1-0 this year. They covered the BYU game. But this one's only 3 points, so it's pretty low. That's why I grabbed the money line here. Minus 142. Absolutely, I do not see Iowa State blowing this. I like Kansas State here. I know I've been a TCU guy most of the year, even before the season began, and I have not been behind Kansas State at all. But I'm going to kind of switch it here. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going to because as we, if you look at it with Kansas State, they were able to get going the last couple of games, and I think that was important. Last week's loss to Baylor was a killer, and I think a lot of teams might just fold. But I still respect Chris Klieman. It's so important that they don't go 2-5. And I think this is still a bowl-capable team. And TCU there's some wrinkles there because they blew that lead against Arizona State. And last week, their game was not as good as it could have been. They still were able to. That was the Colorado game, I think. So there were some wrinkles there for Kansas State. They've covered 10. This is a weird one. They've covered 10 straight games before the Kansas rivalry game. That's crazy. More importantly, they've outgained their last 2 opponents since their recent bye, which is what kind of got them reset. They got the win, almost had 2 straight wins, winning at Baylor, but again, they blew that one. They probably shouldn't have. And so I just I think this is a game where I'm just kind of leaning towards Kansas State. Definitely going with Texas Tech here. Texas Tech has annihilated every opponent they played so far this season. And I don't see any reason that's going to stop here because Kansas can't really stop them offensively. So Kansas would have to put a lot of points on the board, and Texas Tech's defense has looked really, really strong. So they got the first ranked offense and a 9th ranked defense. That give me a good idea. While I say this, I should have already had my rankings up. So let me go ahead and get those up here. Here they are. All right, so here are the rankings for the group of 5. Excuse me, the top 12 this week. So out of I guess the big shakeups were obviously Penn State and Texas. So we've moved Alabama in. We've moved Notre Dame up. Texas Tech is now 8. They were not in. Remember last week we just had them missing. So now they're 8. The reason Oklahoma is not here is because Mateer's out. And I have no idea when he's coming back. So, look, if they could beat Texas this week, then I'll have them moved up. But I got to look at what I see. And until I know that Mateer will be back and where Oklahoma will be at that point, I still think Oklahoma, matter of fact, I think it'd be better if they just lost because they'll get better odds. And I still think now that from what I've seen this season in college football, Oklahoma has every bit a chance to win the national championship. Do I think they will? Probably not, but I think they can definitely make noise, and maybe they get lucky with the bracket. And there's Michigan just making it. Michigan just made it. Who did they just make it over? I can't remember. But there was a couple of teams I was debating, and I just felt Michigan as good as any because they've only had 1 loss, and that was a loss to a really good team, Oklahoma, on the road. And then there's, of course, the group of 5 teams. Since we're already talking about this, I might as well throw in the group of 5. Actually, you know what? We'll wait on that because we're not talking group of 5 yet. Okay, we're talking Texas Tech, though. And again, I just think when you've won every game by 24 or more points, including at Utah, I think that you're in good shape. Also, they've won 4 straight, covered 3 out of the last 4 years against Kansas. And check this weird one out. Kansas is 1-9 against the spread their last 10 games before they go on a bye week. So for whatever reason, these players at Kansas, man, they see a bye week coming and they're already checked out. You don't want to be checked out with Texas Tech on board. And it's a night game too at Texas Tech. So they're going to be really, really fired up for this one. BYU Arizona. This is a tough one. I like BYU because I think they're a better team. But this is tough for me because, as you know, I respect Brennan. I thought Arizona would be a better team this season, and so far so good. I mean, everything that Arizona's done, even when I picked them to lose the game against Iowa State and get blown out, and they did. So they've done everything I thought they were going to do. I just don't know if they're capable of this type of a win. I shouldn't say that. I know they can win this game. This is not some juggernaut team. This is a good team from the Big 12. They're having a good year. But I don't know. I just kind of feel that this is be a really tough game, a close game. And when you've got a really close, tough game, I just go with the team that's, I've said it before. I just think BYU is really well coached. They've got the better talent, and I think they'll find a way. That's basically what it is. I think they'll find a way. You know what's next for BYU? Utah. Big game coming out with Utah. And you might say, well, there's going to be a distraction then. Not necessarily, because BYU is 10-2 against the spread the last 12 years before they play Utah. BYU beat Arizona pretty handily last year as a 3-point home favorite. Now, you could say Arizona's got some revenge there, and they do. So keep an eye on that. But I'm still going to go ahead and go with BYU. All right. Now we finally get to one of my plays of the year. Week. Arizona State and Utah. When I saw this line, I was really taken back. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And the funny thing is, the line keeps getting bigger. So Utah's got this spin, I think, over some bettors because they got so much respect. It's been years and years and years of Kyle Whittingham and in this spot on Saturday night and getting the job done, and being tough, and they're 4-1. They've had one slip up. They've covered 3 out of 4, and all this stuff. I get it because you're playing an Arizona State team in a program that's been the exact opposite. It's what have you done for me just since last year? And so I just don't think they've understood. I think what they also are looking at is Arizona, they lost to Mississippi State. And, they've had a couple of games they've had to come back from. They had to come back to beat TCU. They had to come back to beat Baylor. There's some issues there that they're going to get theirs at some point, whatever. Well, you know what? They did get theirs at some point against Mississippi State. And I think what you're seeing, though, when they're able to beat Baylor in a close game or beat TCU in a close game. Now, let's keep in mind, those are 2 of the better teams in the Big 12. What'd you expect they were going to do? Just blow them out? No, they're hard-fought games. But they're winning those hard-fought Big 12 games because they've got a heck of a coach. They've got a quarterback that's just a true winner. They've got a running game that's still capable, even though Scadaboo's gone. That kid Brown's still doing a good job for them running the ball. They've got the best receiver in the country in Tyson. They got a good defense to match up with Utah's good defense. But on the flip side, what did we say a few weeks ago when they matched up against Texas Tech? We don't know how to look at these players on Utah on offense, this New Mexico quarterback, this New Mexico receiver, this New Mexico offensive coordinator. What would they do in a real Big 12 matchup? And they failed the test miserably. Okay, then they come out the next week and they blow out West Virginia. Wow, am I supposed to be impressed? So now here we go again in another spot, home against another quality team. And this isn't an even game. This isn't Arizona State 3. This isn't Utah 2 or 3. This is 6. This is Arizona State getting 2-1 on the money line. Look, I've been behind Arizona State all year. I believe in what they're doing. I think it's the new coach, the new Winningham is basically what they have on their sidelines. They've got the young coach that everybody's going to be after, and he's not going to leave Arizona State unless he gets some sort of offer that he just can't refuse. Now, could that be Penn State? But there'll be some job. There are going to be a lot of job openings coming for this kid, Dillingham. And at some point, could be this year, could be, because remember, he's going to be looking at, I don't know what he's got recruiting wise, but I think Levitt, he's got another year for them. Levitt, I don't know what Levitt is as an NFL quarterback. I think he might be more of he could be like a late round pick that if he's an experienced quarterback, full out of eligibility. And that's the way to go for Levitt. Make sure that you exhaust all your eligibility, play as long as you can in college, get to the NFL, and then maybe that experience, you'll be able to be a really good quality backup who may be able to somehow wiggle yourself into some sort of a spot like Brock Purdy did. So those are still some dreams he could have. But looking at it from Dillingham's point, what I'm trying to say here is that you lose Tyson and you're going to lose Levitt in the next couple of years. And then where will you be? Do you think you're going to be able to still constantly get lucky with the quarterbacks? And in other words, are you going to be at this peak level where the Penn States of the world, if they have an opening, or these other big programs are going to come after you? Because it could be a couple more years. If you don't get that, maybe you come back down to the pack for a year or two until you can rise back up again. It might take another 5 or 6 years for you to get those opportunities. And as a young kid, that's what I'm saying. He might just be, hey, this is my place. This is my university. I'm going to stay here. I'm a lifer. I got no problem about rebuilding and all that kind of stuff. I've done it once. I'll do it again. I can see all of that happening for Dillingham. But I also just think that it'll be really tempting if one of those major programs come calling. But again, getting back to the reason I even brought it up is because he is a really good coach. He is where Willingham was a few years ago, on top of the world, one of the best coaches in college football. And that means a lot in games like this. I think they got the better quarterback. They've got the better skill position players, and they got the better coach at this point in time. And that's why I'm taking Arizona State in this one. And I think Utah is better than last year. I just think that they're not where they were. They're just not. They're just not the same Utah. I don't see it. I don't see this being the Utah from 3 or 4 years ago. And they had one hiccup last year, and they're right back to being Utah. Times have changed. I don't see it. And I guess I'll have to see it on Saturday night to believe it. Arizona State, 14-5-1 against the spread as a road dog. 1-0 this year in that same spot. They are 15-4 straight up since last year. 15-4. No respect. Let's move on now to the group of 5. As we do that, let's pop up the group of 5 rankings. Here they are. And this should be a tip-off of who one of my top picks are going to be. So Memphis moves up because Boise moves down. I don't really think Tulane is for real. I think even we're going to get into the game. I don't think they're going to last here. I think we're going to see James. I'm going to see next week's winner between James Madison and Old Dominion will be number 3 in 2 weeks. That's my guess. I still want to see Memphis. Who's Memphis playing? Let me see Memphis' schedule because I think they're playing. I know they're playing South Florida. And I believe, of course, South Florida is going to beat them. Yeah, that's in a couple of weeks. That's at Memphis. But Memphis, let's see. They still have to play South Florida at home, Tulane at home, at East Carolina, and Navy at home. Can they lose a couple of times there? Yeah, but they get look. The only thing that really matters is getting to the championship game, which I think they have a good shot at doing. And if they do, then even if they lose to South Florida or whoever loses that game, the winner in the championship game, if it's a rematch between South Florida and Memphis, looks like that's what's going to win the group of 5 and make it to the playoffs. Okay. Let's talk AAC. So, yeah, I think Tulane's vulnerable here. It is a 6.5 spread here. I get 2-1 on the money line with East Carolina. They are 8-3 straight up, 7-3 against the spread under their coach Blake Harrell since he took over last year. 3-0 against the spread as a road dog. 1-0 in that spot this year. So this is going to be tomorrow night. It's a Thursday night game. And check this out. Tulane is the 107th ranked team in defense. And they're also a very highly penalized team. They're not very disciplined this year. So, yeah, there's some things about Tulane that I like, but John Summerall has not gotten this team to really take another step. And I think it's going to be so important the rest of the season and next season because it's time. I mean, come on, let's go. You got the resources there. It's Tulane, Southeast, get it done. But it's there for the taking because you don't want to just keep hanging around waiting for a couple other programs to kind of get going. So this is the time for Tulane to take that next step. But I'm a little bit, disappointed in what I've seen from them this year, to tell you the truth, and not really surprised. It's the reason I took South Florida to win this conference. But I think that this is a game where East Carolina might be able to pull off an upset. If anything, at least make it a full quarter game. Arizona State, one of my top plays. Here you got another one. So if I have to pick, it's going to be between either South Florida or Arizona State. That's what I have to pick with my Wise Guys contest, which way I'm going to go. That's going to be a tough one. But I'm obviously taking South Florida here. Look, North Texas has done a really good job this season being 5-0. Eric Morris, year 3, just like Golesh, year 3. These are two coaches who have done really good jobs with these programs. The whole Mestamaker thing has been great for them. The quarterback, he's still a young quarterback, only a redshirt freshman, but he's having a very good season. They got a freshman running back by the name of Caleb Hawkins, who's been fantastic for them. There's a lot to like. They're 8-2 against the spread as a home favorite, 2-0 in that spot this year. Okay, so there's a lot to like, but let's keep this in mind. They've won 2 games in overtime. They lost at Army, a 1-4 team. They lost at, they beat Army at 1-4 team. They beat Western Michigan, a MAC team, and they probably should have lost that game. So this is not like some sort of clear cut, we're beating everybody 5-0 team. And here's South Florida. And take a look at the schedules of these two teams as well. All right, because those are 2 games they nearly lost, Army and Western Michigan. South Florida, remember, Boise State win, Florida win, Miami loss. Come on, let's not forget that. That's why I'm just really surprised that they're the underdog. I felt they should have gotten respect. It should be a 3-point road. You should give North Texas the respect, but South Florida should get their respect. They should at least be 2.5, at least. Maybe this will change by Saturday. It's only Wednesday. USF 12-5 against the spread as a road dog. Okay, so that's also a good spot that can cancel out North Texas being 8-2 as a home favorite. And I obviously like South Florida. Okay, now this line has gone up a little bit. I don't know why. It's gone from 7 to 9 and a half. I don't know really why it's doing that. Temple came up. Remember I said this beginning of the season, Temple is going to, we said it the week of Oklahoma, that this is probably not the week it's going to happen, of course, but keep an eye on Temple as a team that's going to pull off an upset or 2. That they've got the right coach to turn the program around. And sure enough, they've already, checked one of the boxes. They got the upset win last week over Texas San Antonio. Now they can do they do it 2 weeks in a row? That's the tough thing for these types of upsets. But I'm getting 9.5 now, and I'm getting 10. I don't know why we're getting that many points. I mean, check this out. Temple has covered 13 straight games as a home dog of less than 7. Now, maybe is that why the line went up to 9? Because they can't use that now. I don't know. But now that it's up to 9, the fact is, yes, that means it's a tougher opponent. And so I get that. But this has been their opposition the last 3. Oklahoma, at Georgia Tech, UT San Antonio. Those are really tough games. They have been playing battle-tested games. Navy hasn't. Navy hasn't really played anybody. Air Force, not very good this year. I mean, they can't stop anybody. And that was a 3-point game. That looked, they were vulnerable last week, Navy, against Air Force. And the game against UAB a few weeks back, that game was a tie game in the second half. I mean, they have, and I really expected more from Navy, to tell you the truth. I really did. I'm not surprised they're undefeated. I thought they'd have a little bit more of an easy go about it, but they haven't. So yeah, I'll take Temple here. I definitely feel a lot better with the 9.5, 10 than I do with the outright upset, because as I said, it's very hard to do that 2 weeks in a row. I still will play it because I think it's definitely possible. And the last time they played Navy at home, they were a 14-point dog, and they won the game outright. So that's the AAC. Let's go to the Mountain West. Well, here's a couple of AAC games that we are not going to touch. All right. We like some games here. Fresno State, that's the play. Matt Entz has really got Fresno State going. They did not make our group of 5. Did we go? I didn't really go over everything with the group of 5. We just talked about South Florida up here. But here, there's San Diego State. So we do have 2 Mountain West teams. Well, 3, but we've got 2 here. UNLV and San Diego State. San Diego State just made it in over Fresno. So Fresno State's playing really well after their opening loss to Kansas, but they really haven't had a very super tough schedule. So you got to keep that in mind, but Colorado State's not any good. Very disappointing season for the Rams. Very disappointing. But Fresno State, that would be the play here. I'm just not like overly excited about it, but that would be the play. This one a little bit tricky because I kind of feel Air Force at some point with that offense is going to be able to catch a team. I just don't know if this is the week. UNLV has capitalized a lot this year on turnovers, big plays. They had 2 block punt for touchdowns in the win last week in the snow at Wyoming. So they're just finding ways to win. They had a crazy win against Miami a few weeks ago. So, Dan Mullen has done a nice job, but it's not the same team. We know that. So I don't know. I just kind of think it's possible that we could see a vulnerable team this week, especially since UNLV's defense is not very good either. UNLV and Air Force, both teams not very good. We could see again. Look at the total, 65. So you don't need me to tell you that. UNLV though 4-0 against the spread. Air Force 1-3. It's kind of the reason why I'll stay away from it. After I initially was wondering whether or not Air Force can pull this upset, and also just keep in mind UNLV is like top 5 in turnover margin. Air Force is very weak turnover margin, so that you would think would be a come into play at some point. Okay, next up, San Jose State, Wyoming, and I'm kind of getting the feeling that Jay Sawwell's just not the guy. I've talked about repeatedly that Wyoming and the history with Bowl, Craig Bowles, the coach, and them as a home dog under Bowl, but Sawvell's just not been able to duplicate it at all. They outplayed UNLV last week. They had the snow game. Everything was lined up, and they still couldn't. They had the 2 block punt. They just can't get it done with Sawvell. So they're 5-12 with him as the head coach. I just don't think it's going to work. I think he'll be replaced by the end of the year. San Jose State, a lot of people thought they were going to be a tough contender this year in the Mountain West. They get off to the sluggish start, lose the home game against Central Michigan, and everybody's just thinking, it's not going to be this year. But now they're starting to get back to respectability. maybe to be the team. Okay, maybe this can be that team. And that's why I like San Jose State in this spot. Remember, we liked them last week against New Mexico. The line was very low as a home favorite against New Mexico. Won that game by 7. I think this is the same thing. They're a better team than Wyoming is. There's no value here with Wyoming at all. And I say definitely take San Jose State here. And we still have 3 more to go, and we're going to start with a double-digit upset play. I'm going to go ahead and take New Mexico here because New Mexico's earned this right this season to get this shot. And here's why. Again, remember I said that you got to come up with reasonings to come up with these upsets. Well, here's my reasoning. I think just like I was saying with Florida State, I think the same psychology should be going on with Boise right now after the loss to Notre Dame. That wasn't a close game. Everybody knows it. Wasn't a close game on the scoreboard. It's over. That's it. There's no chance now for Boise State to go to the playoffs. It is over. Madsen threw 4 interceptions. The only thing they could do is all right, we're back into conference play. Let's win the Mountain West and go from there. And I'm sure that's what the coach speak is going to be. But after the season they had last season, you can't win it. You can't win the Mines. I don't think you can, not in a week. So I think this is a vulnerable spot for Boise State. And you got a New Mexico team that even though they lost last week, once again, they were competitive. They've had a very good start to the season. How about this too? They've covered 6 straight when in a revenge situation when they take on an opponent off a double-digit straight-up loss. And at some point, you're going to see New Mexico pull off the upset here because it hasn't happened since 2015. And in that game, New Mexico was a 30-point dog, and they pulled off the upset. Here, it's only 16. So crazier things have happened. Okay. Now, interesting enough, they went to a bowl that year, also went to a bowl the next year. So actually those are the last really good New Mexico teams. I think Bob Davie might have been the coach. And this is a good New Mexico team. So why not? This could be a good spot for them. And next week, Boise State hosts UNLV. So that could be a good one. I just think that if you're looking for an upset play, if you're looking for a team maybe hungover, I think you got one there. San Diego State. Now, San Diego is definitely the play here. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned with is Nevada. Remember, I had them as a double-digit play last week, and they almost pulled it off. They were down 3. They had the ball with a few minutes to go, and they just couldn't get it done. They turned their attention, they turned the offense over to a freshman quarterback. Okay. This kid, Carter Jones, freshman quarterback. And in relief, he was 11 of 15, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. But they did lose the game. So this is going to be his first career start this week. And I think that's a little bit different. Now you're the guy. Now everybody's zeroing in on you. You can't just come off the bench. So that's a little bit different. But the reason we took Nevada last week is because they continually put themselves in these spots the last year and a half to lose close games. So that's why 7.5 does make me nervous. And if you look at it too, they get a San Diego State team that just continues to just surprise. I don't think anybody expected this from San Diego State, the way they've been playing. But if you look at it, and we have told you this the last couple of games, and hopefully you took advantage of it. But I'm going with it again. Under Sean Lewis, the head coach, they are now 11-3, straight up and against the spread. Basically, this is Sean Lewis, not the program. This is Sean Lewis. He's 11-3, straight up and against the spread when he takes on an opponent off back-to-back losses. And he's also 7-0 all time, straight up and against the spread when his teams own a win percentage of 400 and better in that scenario. They've done that very 2 trends the last 2 games. So make it a third, why don't you? I say, why not? Also, San Diego State's 11-1 against the spread after they score 35 or more when they take on an opponent with a win percentage of 500 or less. Conference opponent, win percentage 500 or less. So that's good. And how about this for cream on cherry on the top? They've covered 12 straight as a road favorite of more than 2. Okay. 12 straight road favorite, more than 2, off a double-digit ATS win. And they're 1-0 in that spot this year. So there's a lot that says San Diego State, even without the trends, they're clearly better than Nevada. And how about this too? Nevada's 8-34 straight up since 2022. They just lose, but they do find ways to cover. And that's why you need to be a little bit nervous about the game. But I say just keep riding San Diego State. And finally, this is a game that switched. It was 1 Hawaii. Now it's 1 Utah State. And, we've talked highly about both of these teams as nice Mountain West Conference sleepers. So we like this game. We like these teams. I don't like taking these games because when I like both teams. So I'm not going to. But if I had to, I'd probably take the side of Utah State. I think they are the better team. They have beaten Hawaii 8 straight times. They beat them last year 55-0. Something tells me, excuse me, 55-10. Something tells me that there might be a little bit of payback here. So that's why I'm just staying away from the game. Check this out. Utah State is 21-2-1. That's right, 21-2-1 off a non-conference road game. And they're 1-0 in that same role this week. They get back their star safety, Ike Larson, who's been suspended so far this season. Good news for Utah State. Keep an eye, though. This is important. Now, maybe we've heard some news, which is the reason the line switched, because Bryson Barnes, who's had a very good year at quarterback, he's a Utah transfer. He's doing a great job this season for Utah State. He had a little bit of a banged-up situation at Vandy a couple of weeks ago, and they came off the bye. But this week, early in the week, nobody was sure if he'd play or not. So maybe we got news now. He's going to play. He leads the Mountain West with 11 touchdown passes, also has 6 rushing touchdowns, and has 17. That 17 combined touchdowns is 3rd nationally. Okay, so this kid is really doing a great job. They're well coached with Bronco Mendenhall. And look, it's tough though, because I also like Hawaii. They've Hawaii, of course, that is. They've outgained 5 of 6 teams they've played. It's been a very good year for them. This should be a really good game. Not a game I'm touching, but if I was, like I said, I just think Utah State's a better team. And if I was going to take a team, and they were still getting really good odds just a couple of weeks ago to win the conference. Remember that when we went over it. I still think they're an excellent play right now to win the conference, because I still think you're getting double digits. Sunbelt time. All right, let's quickly go over these. This is Thursday night. I do like Southern Miss in this one. But Georgia Southern they're a dangerous team. They're 7-0-1 against the spread at home versus teams with a record of 500 or better, 1-0 in that spot this year. So, Georgia Southern got off to a slow start, but they are not that team, because they got blown out those first couple of games against far better opponents. But I think they're better than that, and I think they're starting to show that now. Now, here's a tricky one for James Madison. They got Old Dominion next week. Going to be a great game for us to watch. Homecoming as well. Huge game. This is a distraction because of that. Okay. But remember, this is the problem that you got to keep an eye on this game. Louisiana, a lot of people thought they were going to be the best team from the division they're in. And maybe we would see this as a championship game matchup. But then they lost their quarterback. And then Louisiana just did not play well and have not played well. Okay? Until their 3rd string quarterback, Lunch Winfield. You heard that right. Lunch Winfield had a big game a couple of weeks ago. Comes off the bench, big game against Marshall. And he's going to make his first start in for that big game. They won 54-51 against Marshall in overtime. He was 125 for 2 touchdowns and 129 rushing for 3 touchdowns, including the game-winning rushing touchdown in overtime. This was a game like in the last 4 minutes that was like each team was scoring, and then go to overtime, and then I think Georgia Southern kicked the field goal, and then Marshall kicked the field goal, and then he ran it in for the win. First meeting of these two teams. So look, it's still a third string quarterback, no matter how good he looked. But at least Louisiana may not be a dangerous team to still maybe we'll see a rematch in the championship game. Keep an eye on that. But also just James Madison's got Old Dominion next week. And last week, I think it was when they played Georgia State, they only won like 7, which was really disappointing for James Madison fans. So this is just a tricky game is what I'm saying. You're getting 625 on the money line. It's not the worst idea in the world. Old Dominion is playing the team who lost to Louisiana, Marshall. And you know how we feel about Old Dominion and James Madison. So I'm really looking forward to that next week. I'm kind of favoring Old Dominion right now. I just think Old Dominion's a better team than James Madison, but I think it can go either way. It can go either way because neither team really has a passing offense. And I think it's going to be one of those games where turnovers will come into play. Whoever wins that game next week is turnovers will come into play. But Old Dominion, I think they should have no problem scoring on Marshall. And how about this? The road team in the series has covered the last 6 times. Marshall is another team, sort of like Lafayette, that's gotten a boost from their quarterback, but this quarterback was more of a starter, and that is this kid Wilson. He's doing a real good job. So Marshall's starting to play a little bit better, this is another game that, even though I like Old Dominion, and I kind of feel, I don't know, this is tough. I think both Marshall and Louisiana can cause some problems, especially since Old Dominion is on the road. And I already went through the reasons why with Louisiana. And those are big point spreads. App State, I don't think we have anything here. Georgia State's had a tough schedule, though. Keep that in mind. Louisiana Monroe, you know how we feel about them. We'll take them over Coastal Carolina because you know how we feel about them. That's another program that will have a new head coach real soon. And Louisiana Monroe, I just think right now the better team. And another game we did hit last week, Northwestern. Remember, we just couldn't figure out why Northwestern was an 11-point favorite against Louisiana Monroe. Just could not figure that out. And they just blew them out. Now, here's another game that I think is pretty good for the dog. Troy. They lost their quarterback. We talked about that, Crowder. Kilcrease comes in, looks awful against Memphis. First game in, he was just lost. But the last few games, he's been better. He's won both of his starts as a dog. They upset Buffalo, and then they upset South Alabama. So all of a sudden, Troy is kind of now dangerous again. Texas State, meanwhile, not the team some of us thought they could have been after they got off to such a good start. So you got to keep that in mind. Also, Texas State, even though they beat Troy last year, it was their first win in the series in 12 years. So they had lost 12 straight times to Troy. Beat Troy last year. 9.5. That's too high. Too high. I like Troy here in this one. And then we round it all out with the weaker conferences, the MAC and the Conference USA. Here's a possible double-digiter. Bowling Green. Bowling Green's had a tough schedule. And they've covered 3 out of 4 with that tough schedule. So they're a live dog here. I don't understand why this is so high, especially since Toledo just lost to Western Michigan a couple of weeks ago on the road with the same type of big number. And especially since Toledo, if you don't even just forget the money line, I think it's not a bad idea to take the money line for double-digit money line plays. That's okay. I think it's a decent one. But I just definitely take the 11. Toledo is 4-15 in their last 19 as a road favorite. I mean, the only one that they were in that spot a couple of weeks ago, they lost the game outright to Western Michigan. So, and Bowling Green has beaten Toledo 2 out of the last 3 years, covering all three, with all three, Toledo being the favorite. Okay. Next up. I don't really care about that. I do like Eastern Michigan here. They're 6-2 as a home dog since 2021. And true freshman quarterback Brady Davidson will make his first start on the road. He made his first start ever last week in their loss against Miami. Remember I said Kent State, keep an eye on them after I brought them up early in the Oklahoma game? Well, the reason I said to hold on for this one is because, and I said this a few weeks ago, remember I was going, well, anytime you talk about big games of the week, and don't ever take your games of the week, or don't ever put like your best game of the week from teams from like the MAC, the conference. Don't do that. It's the worst thing you can do. I've got experience with this, unless it's just your thing. In saying that, they're not my top pick, USF, Arizona State. And I even would take Rutgers over Kent State. But I like this a lot. Okay. Similar to the reason why I loved Temple in the first game of the season. Don't forget, Temple was like a 2-point favorite week 1 against UMass. And you're looking back at it now and you're going, why and what? Exactly. Nothing has changed. I don't understand why UMass is not being looked at as this just bad team. The defense isn't bad. That's because they have Joe Hirosimiak, the former Rutgers defensive coordinator, who, if he would still be with Rutgers, they would be really good this year, but that's another story. But they got no offense to speak of. And check this out. UMass is 0-5, 1-3 against the spread. They lost to FCS Bryant as well. They were outgained in that game too, so it wasn't fluky. Kent State, meanwhile, even though it's their first favorite roll since 2022, which does concern me, they lost to Texas Tech, Florida State, Oklahoma. All right. Those were 3 of their 4 losses. But what's important to note, under a new head coach, Matt Carney, this year, what's important to note is that in the last couple of weeks, they lose to Buffalo by 3. They were a 24-point road dog when they lost to Buffalo by 3. Okay. They gave up a game-winning touchdown with a minute left, or they would have beaten Buffalo on the road as a 24-point dog. Then they have a bye. And this is what you're looking at when you have first-year coaches. You're trying to build something. You're looking for progress as the season goes on. Comes off the bye. Who did they play? Oklahoma. Now, just a few weeks ago, they played at Florida State to give up like 700 yards offense, whatever, which is like an all-time high or something like that. Now, in just a few weeks later, this is like the least amount of yards in several years that they've given up to a FBS Power 4 program. 355 yards. Now, yes, no John Mateer. We get it. And maybe that's another sign of why I said before with the Texas game, why I'm not very thrilled about Hawkins. 355 yards they gave up. That is a really impressive showing. So they've got a lot of confidence right now. They nearly beat Buffalo. They already have a win on the season, unlike UMass. And they're at home. Why do I have to worry about them losing to UMass? I don't know. Now, if this was Kent State last year when they were just awful every week, awful, bad program, need to get rid of the coach, that's different. First-year coach, they've got something going. This would just be surprising to me if they would lose this game with the direction they're going. So yeah, I mean, again, it's Kent State. I get it, but I would do it. Let's just put it this way. If you're ever going to do it with teams from these conferences like this is a good week to do it. Western Michigan, it's up to about 9.5 now. I think that's a little bit too high. Ball State had a big win against Ohio last week. I think the one thing you need to keep an eye on, though, and maybe this is why the more days go by, the more research is done, and people might notice that Western Michigan leads the nation in most sacks. Ball State, 118th in sacks allowed. That is a very bad combination for Ball State's sake. But still, Ball State got the big win last week against Ohio, and they're first-year coach, so I think they're not bad as far as they're again, like Kent State, they've got something to look forward to, especially with a big win. Western Michigan, we like them. We said it before for the past 3 weeks as a really good sleeper to win this conference. I think they were 14-1 that we got them as a future to win the championship in the MAC. And I think the important thing for me to feel confident they'd cover this is that even though Ball State beat Ohio, it was a big win that you would think that the second game, all right, they'll come down a little bit, whether it's a hangover or they've kind of already had their win. They're not going to win 2 of these back to back. They're not that talented enough to do it. That's one way to look at it. Also, it's a homecoming game for Western Michigan. They're 4-1 against the spread this year, and they've covered all 5 in this role as a home favorite under head coach Lane Taylor. So I still say take Western Michigan, but just a little weary about that number. And to wrap it all up, we've got the mighty Conference USA. There is a game we do like in this conference, and here it is. Kennesaw State and Louisiana Tech. This one is, where are we? 7 o'clock on Saturday night. It's a 6-point spread. You get almost 2-1 on the money line with Kennesaw State. Jerry Mack, first-year head coach, did a really good job, and he's obviously building something because they led the last 2 games. They led Middle Tennessee State 21-3. Excuse me, that was last week. The week before that, they led Arkansas State 21-0. So even if you look at the way the scores ended or looked at the yards, just keep that in mind. They didn't fluky get off to these starts. They got off to really big starts the last 2 weeks, and they just held on to win. That's what you're supposed to do. So I think that means that they're a dangerous team. Keep an eye on the fact that, or keep in mind that Louisiana Tech has had a very simple schedule so far, and they've been outgained in their last 2 wins. And the schedule not very good. Also, Kennesaw State lost last year in this matchup 33-0. So they have a little bit of revenge on their minds. The one thing I'm worried about, I've said this to you before, I like Louisiana Tech. I think they should have been more respected in some of their lines this year. And lo and behold, they're 4-0 against the spread. So, but this one, I just think is one of those games where I still think Louisiana Tech is better. But I think it's just one of those situations where, maybe Jerry Mack's got something going here. And I kind of want to be on that ride with them if they do, because I'm getting value at 2-1 on the money line. Louisiana Tech is clearly, in a situation where they could be vulnerable. I don't expect this to be a blowout. So if Kennesaw State gets a couple of bounces and that kind of thing, maybe this could be a really, really big win for Mack in the program. But hey, at least it's a Thursday night game. So you get that. That's a nice one. Okay, that's it for college. Let us talk some NFL. And starting here, we have a Thursday night game. We did talk to Anthony Miller from Inside the Eagles. In case you want to check that interview out. We did that Monday. And so Anthony, actually, I asked him for a prediction, and Anthony said that he believes that this is going to be a closer game than 7, and he would take the under. So Anthony, my Eagles guy, even though he's an Eagles guy, said take the Giants and the under. He just doesn't think Philly, from what he's seen this year, everybody knows now they've been outgained by all 5 opponents, and it's not a mirage. They've got offensive line issues. They've got health concerns there. Keep an eye on that as well. He believes that it's very possible that Dickerson should just not even play this week. They could even decide to rest Lane Johnson. They're going up against a giant, really, that the good part of that giant team is that front wall that they have on defense. So, it's a division game. It's a nationally televised game. So watch out in this one. That's all I got. I'm going to respect Anthony. I think everything he said anyway makes a lot of sense to me. So there you go. All right. I actually thought this line would be a lot bigger. And just to, because I know some of you might be like, oh, of course, he's going with Michigan. He's going with Rutgers. He's a Michigan Rutgers fan. Well, if that was the case, then I'd be taking the Jets every week as well. And obviously that hadn't been the case. I told you last week I like the Cowboys, and you saw what happened. And I don't see why I would take the Jets this week either. I mean, the only reason to take the Jets, the only reason is you think Denver, just like the Jets, they're making this trip, but not just that reason. They made the trip on the road, okay, to Philly. Then they get the big win, and they look, 0-5 Jets. That's easy. Letdown, trip to London, distraction. So you got distraction, letdown in their minds. And that's why people are possibly thinking that this game could be a lot closer. I just don't see it because sure, now here's, and I'll say this, if I have to talk about this game with the other shows this week, we'll be on at 1:00 tomorrow, Playbook ATS podcast with Mark, Jim, Andy, and I. And then Mark, Jim, and I will be on 2:30 on Friday. Now, I know that Jim, as we heard in his show a little while ago, had some, some allergies or something like that. So that, I don't know if he's going to be available the next couple of days, but hopefully he will be. So, but if we don't talk about this game again, then just keep this in mind, okay? Justin Fields has not thrown an interception this year. He's got a 4-0 ratio. I think he's got 3 rushing touchdowns. His completion percentage is close to 70%. Okay. The Jets' rushing attack is averaging over 5 yards a game. If you look at how the Jets have lost games, you look at the Pittsburgh game in the first game of the season when they outplayed the Steelers, everybody knows it, and yet they lost on a 60-yard field goal. And a fluky way to set up the 60-yard field goal, by the way. You know, sort of like an old Steelers, Terry Bradshaw. What was that play called? I forget what that play was called. Some miracle play. But this one set up the touchdown. Same franchise, too. And, all right, the next week, they get blown up by the Bills. But then after that, they go to Tampa. And they lose Fields. So Fields is not available. Now they don't have their starter. And still, without their starting quarterback, and without Jermaine Johnson, their starting edge rusher, and without their best linebacker, Quincy Williams, they hang in there with maybe one of the best teams in football, the Tampa Bay Bucks. They not hang in there, but come back against them, actually put themselves in position to win the game, and then lose on the last drive. Then they go to Miami, and they march down the field with their offense, with the running game, at ease. And they're about to plunge it in to the end zone, and Braylon Allen fumbles, and psychologically it's over. Even though in the game they still were in it, okay, but they couldn't finish the deal. And then last week against the Cowboys, they're in the game against the Cowboys, and Breece Hall, who had another good game, is and you could tell the way the offense was going. This is the Cowboys defense too. And Breece Hall runs inside the 10-yard line, fumbles the football. And they were done after that. They're clearly having a problem with adversity. But what they are not is just a team that is not playing hard, and they're not talented, and they're just getting beat up from the start to finish and all. That's not what they are. It just may look like that to people who are not paying attention to watching their games. But because I have to watch them because I'm a fan, I'm just telling you that's just not what they are. So I'm bringing that up just because there is no doubt that Aaron Glenn will fix them. There shouldn't be any concern about that. And I know most fans aren't. He will get it fixed. The first step is getting some confidence in that locker room. And I believe once he gets that, then there'll be no turning back. But it's going to take a while because they're still undisciplined. There's a lot to also understand. As I said before, they still haven't gotten Jermaine Johnson back as an edge rusher. They still aren't going to get Quincy Williams back for at least another few weeks. And the thing that was their sore spot was they had nobody to catch the ball besides of course, Wilson. That's it. They got one receiver, and that's all. And that was going to be their weakness. And it just looks really bad now because they're 0-5. But that's why I think when you look at a game like this, you can see that if they actually don't do anything stupid, and in ways you can't predict that. You just can't predict that, they're going to turn the ball over here or something. Adversity is going to strike again, and they're going to all kind of crawl, and put their. You just really can't predict that. Now you could say, which I'm going to say, that's why I'm picking Denver to win and cover, is that they're just not good right now, and they're just nowhere near as good as Denver. I mean, Denver just beat Philadelphia. And even if they have a little bit of a hangover, and even if they have a little bit of a, hey, this is an 0-5 team, they'll still figure out a way to cover 7.5. I just can't see that this isn't going to happen. So, yeah, take Denver over the Jets. And if you think the Jets are going to win some games this year, which they will, well, that's coming up in the next couple of weeks because they're playing Carolina and Cincinnati. It's just not going to happen on Sunday. All right, Dallas and Carolina. And I like Dallas again. I'll take the Cowboys over Carolina here. They're 13-5-1 against the spread. Their last 19 is a road favorite. They have owned this series, beaten Carolina 3 straight times in the last 4 years. They beat them easy last year, 30-14 late in the season. And that was when they had Garrett wasn't there. Prescott wasn't there. They had, what's his name? The guy who's now the brilliant starting quarterback for the Ravens. So Carolina also 0-6 against the spread at home in their last 6 against a NFC East team, for whatever that's worth. And I just think Dallas is a better team. So I'll take Dallas minus the 3. Okay. You're going to make me... What are you doing here? Let's do that. Okay. Come on, refresh. All right. So next up, Indianapolis and Arizona. Sort of like the Denver game. I think exactly like the Denver game. It's like, of course you're going to take Indianapolis over Arizona because Arizona's confidence is just completely gone. And everybody knew that. They knew it. They knew it because they understood early in the season when they weren't finishing teams, when they were making dumb mistakes and they were letting teams in games, things of that nature. Oh, we got to correct that. As soon as we correct that, we'll be better. Well, they haven't corrected it. And it reared its ugly head against Tennessee. Everybody saw what happened. They should not have lost that game. They should be 3-2. So the question is, will they be able to just forget that, come right out against the Colts, and just be a competitive team, which is they've been all season, because they have lost 3 games by 5 points. But that's the question that we just don't have an answer for. This is just going to be a guess. Do you believe Arizona will use that Tennessee game as like a excuse to themselves to just have a bad week, at least one bad week, where they're just going to feel sorry for themselves? Or are they going to be the same team that we've seen all season, which means that we're going to have a really close game? That's why this game is also going to be tricky. Now, I would definitely give Arizona a much better chance to cover than I do the Jets. That's for sure. Also, how about this? They've covered 12 straight as dogs off of an ATS loss when they take on an opponent off of a straight-up win. They're 1-0 in that spot this year. And they've covered 8 straight on the road off of back-to-back straight-up ATS losses. So they have a lot going for them there. They've outgained 4 or 5 of their opponents this season. Excuse me, they've been outgained by 4 or 5 of their opponents this season, which is the only negative that you have to take a look at their situation. But I will say this: I think in general. Oh, thanks, David. Immaculate reception, perfect. I think that in general, for looking at being outgained. I think you could look at a few of those games where they had big leads and then let teams come back. And so there's a lot of yardage in there that wouldn't. So I don't look at that like, yeah, they've been, pretty much the bad team in 4 or 5 games. No, they haven't. It hasn't been like that. But it does need to be pointed out that way. Also, the Colts, they dropped 8 straight covers after they've scored more than 35 or more points, and they're 0-1 in that spot this year for what that's worth. More importantly, they've covered 7 out of 9 as a home favorite since the beginning of the 2023 season. They're 2-0 in that role this year. And in every game they've played this year, the Colts, if they win, okay, then they win straight up and against the spread, and they outgain their opponent. And if they lose, then the opposite. So if that stays the same, then you have to ask yourself, are they going to beat the Cardinals? Then you'll know if they cover. And I think that's a pretty good way to look at it anyway. That's another reason why I'm not into teasers myself, because statistically speaking, if you win in the NFL, you cover. Okay, and statistically speaking, since that's the case, then why do I worry about a teaser? Okay, so, I mean, do I think Arizona is a live dog? I actually think they could be. Because let's say they just win that game that they had no right losing because of that fluky play. Then people would be giving Arizona a lot more respect this week. So watch out for Arizona. I don't think that it's a bad idea to look at them as a potential upset play. I definitely wouldn't take the Colts in a survivor pool. All right, Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and the obvious in this matchup is what's going on with the fact that Pittsburgh gets the bye week while Cleveland has to have a trip from London. So that's a very weird deal there. Which may be the reason why the line is bumped up a little bit. But check this out. This is not going well for Cleveland here. Cleveland is 0-7 against the spread away when they take on an opponent off of back-to-back straight-up wins. 0-1 this year in that role. So in other words, when they're on the road taking on a team that's playing well, no good. They're 2-17 against the spread off back-to-back straight-up ATS losses when they take on a division opponent. That's really bad, 2-17. And how about an even worse sign for the Browns on the Pittsburgh side for Mike Tomlin? He's 12-3 against the spread when he's taking on an opponent. Actually, no. He's 12-3 against the spread when his team is coming off an upset win, which they are, from a couple of weeks ago against Minnesota. This is only the second home game for Pittsburgh all season. Don't forget they lost week 2 at home against Seattle. And Gabriel gets the second start. I kind of have to go with Pittsburgh in this one. But look, the Steelers have not, remember, Pittsburgh is not like a team that gains a lot of people, a lot of teams. And the Browns have got that defense. So there's still a lot there that, I don't know. I mean, I just, even though Pittsburgh should be the play here, I don't know I think I'd just rather go with some other games. And it just wouldn't be a complete shock either if the Browns were able to pull off the upset. 2-1 there. I think what really hurts their cause is that coming over from London and having Pittsburgh in the travel situation, it's just such a big advantage for them. Chargers in Miami. This is definitely one of the better games of the week. I know the Chargers are having major injury issues, and they dropped 2 straight. They shouldn't have even lost to Washington. I mean, they led 10-0. They completely owned the game. And then Johnston fumbles the ball, and it was like they were the Jets all of a sudden. The Chargers have covered 8 straight as a road favorite after scoring 10 or less, and they've covered 7 straight off back-to-back straight-up ATS losses when they take on an opponent with a 600 or less winning percentage. Still, even with the injuries, the Chargers are a better team than Miami. I just can't see the Chargers losing this game. It's 4.5. I get it, but I'm not going to worry about the points there. Now, here's a game I'm not going to worry about the points here for sure. Rams 7, Baltimore. And I would even consider taking the Rams as my top pick overall for the Wise Guy contest if they hadn't blown it for me last week. So I'm not doing that again. But the Rams are clearly, I mean, they're playing here and Baltimore's playing here. It's just teams going in opposite directions. There's no life in Baltimore at all. We said that last week when we interviewed Tony Lombardi, who covers the Ravens for Russell Street Report. He told you this was going to happen. And I don't think it ends in 1 week. So they don't even get the backup bump here. That was supposed to be last week. Also, how about this? Rams have outgained all 5 opponents. Ravens outgained by all 5 opponents. So I have got no problem giving 7 here to Baltimore. And the only thing that might be a distraction for the Rams is they'll be going to London next week. We have another 1 o'clock game. That is a few more. No. Oh, this is a 1 o'clock game? Okay, this is a 1 o'clock game. Why did I thought this was a 4 o'clock game? Maybe it was a 4 o'clock game. It was moved to 1 o'clock. All right. Anyway, I think the Patriots definitely the way to go here. They're a 3-point favorite. Drake May's first role is a road favorite, so keep that in mind. The first time he was a favorite, that didn't go well, week 1, but I think it will go okay here. And even though the Patriots have been outgained by 4 of their 5 opponents, including Las Vegas, Miami, and Carolina, the fact is they're just clearly a better team than the Saints at this point. Saints got their win, got it out of the Rattler finally won a game, but win 2 straight? I don't think so. And how about this? They're 6-13-1 in their last 20 as a home dog. They're 0-2 in that role this year. And this is a big one, 1-14 against the spread off a double-digit straight-up win when they take on a non-division opponent. So I'm definitely taking the Patriots and giving the 3 in that one. I'm also taking Seattle against Jacksonville. Seattle, wow, they just played the wrong team last week. Tampa Bay, that is a definite Super Bowl contender. There's no doubt about it. Baker Mayfield is playing off the charts. And you know what? Darnold had a heck of a game as well. This is a good game, good matchup. But I think Seattle's got a little bit of an edge here in the fact that even though they don't have the travel edge, again, isn't it funny that every time we get these 4 o'clock, these West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast, the games are always at 1 o'clock. But you have a Seattle team that I just think is they want to just get back to winning. They just lost a game they shouldn't have, and this is a good team. Seattle, good team. And I expect that they're going to do that. Jacksonville, meanwhile, I think there'll be a hangover situation after their win. It was also a Monday night game. It's a short week. So I think there are a little bit of negatives in there with going with Jacksonville. But I'm going to go ahead and take Seattle as the short dog here. This one, I mean, you got other games, don't you? I will throw in some trends if you want to just know about them. Tennessee, 0-12 against the spread as AFC dogs of more than 3 when they take on losing teams. 0-1 in that spot this year. 0-12. Vegas, meanwhile, not so good here. 1-9 ATS home off a double-digit ATS loss. 1-9 against the spread after allowing 35 or more. They're 0-1 in both roles this year. But I will say this, I think, and sort of like what I was saying with the Jets, Vegas, look, have they had their clunkers? Absolutely. When they played good teams, they have just been beat. But when they don't play good teams, they actually should have been 2-0. Okay, they should have beat the Bears. They missed a field goal at the end of the game that they should have hit, and if they got blocked, and they outplayed the Bears in the game. So this should not be a situation when they're playing another bad team that you should be going, well, I don't know, Tennessee, they got to win. And does anybody think Tennessee is going to win 2 straight? I guess the question is, do you want to give up 4.5? And that's where I'd be like, do I really need to bet this game? Now, this is one that, and I guess Flacco's playing already this week. Is that what we're hearing? But this is one where you just wonder, are the Bengals going to get blown out one more week before maybe they can kind of get something going with Flacco? Or can they hang here? Because that's a lot of points. Now it's 14 right now, but if it gets over 14, the Packers have dropped 6 straight games when they're a favorite by more than 14 points. So just remember I said that. Packers coming off the bye, had the tie against the Cowboys. And remember, that's not a great Cowboy team. And that's the tie. They gave up 40 points in that game. So, and also the Packers are 1-10 against the spread after they allow 35 or more versus an opponent off of a double-digit straight-up loss. I just think there's a lot of points. I get it, why it is, but I don't know. I just think there's too many points. Definitely taking Tampa Bay here. And, Mac Jones, this is going to be interesting with Mac Jones. All right. Because the Niners have Purdy. They paid him. They're not going to keep Mac Jones next year. Mac Jones, if he keeps playing this year and playing at this level, he will get a job as a starter next year. Where that will be, who knows? But there's more than enough teams out there looking for a nice young starting quarterback, the next reclamation guy. And Mac Jones should be it. So good for him. But anyway, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, who's the better team? I say Tampa Bay. And that's why I'm taking the Bucs here minus the 3. I don't have any trends for you, anything like that. That's all. Tampa Bay's better. I'm taking the Bucs at home minus the 3. Here's a really good one between Detroit and the Chiefs. Sunday Night Football, major matchup. Chiefs off the dreadful, they're up 14-0 against Kansas City. Jacksonville has that awful, dumb turnover at the goal line. But unlike the Jets, they don't bury themselves in the sand and they come back and win the game. For the Chiefs side, it just shows you that this is just not the same Chiefs team. Now, have they been getting better each week? They have. I still think the Chiefs are definitely in a much better situation than they were when the season started. I get it. But Detroit, they're just playing excellent football right now. They're not losing games. They're winning games. They're doing just fine. And how do you look and take a look at the Lions under Campbell in these spots? We just got to keep saying these things. Under Campbell, 21-4 against the spread on the road, 12-1 against the spread after they score 35 or more points, 2-0 this year, 19-2 against the spread off a double-digit ATS win, 2-0 in that role this year. They're also getting 2 points in this game. I think they should have been the favorite. It's now up to 2.5. Good. Keep going. Go to 3. Let it. The thing I am worried about is injuries again with Detroit. All right. So that does concern me because they lose Arnold. And that's something to be talked about because he gets hurt, shoulder injury, and he comes back last week. And we talked about this with Arnold out and with Reed out. We knew Reed was definitely out on IR, but Arnold, there was some talk. He could play, couldn't. He did play. Then he re-aggravates the injury, and now it looks like he's going to be out for a while. That's a bad look. Anytime that happens, it's a bad look. Why are you pushing this guy out there to play the Bengals? Come on. Did you really need to do that? So, you've already lost Reed. Now, if Reed was there, I would have thought differently. But with Reed, you just can't afford to lose both starting corners. Now you have. That does worry me in this game. And so one and only thing I'm worried about, I'm not saying the Chiefs can't beat the Lions. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's so much going on with the Lions right now. There's a lot of questions with the Chiefs right now that, of course, I'm taking Detroit. But, hey, if they just don't have the players out there on the field, it will cost them potentially. And that's what I would be the most worried about. So, okay. Monday night. And I'm taking the Bills. I think they'll get right back on the horse here. I think what kind of hurt them against the Patriots, and you see this in college a lot, they had too many home games early. And when you have so many home games early, and then you start to go play on the road, they had one road game. It was in New York. They didn't leave New York until now against Atlanta. It's like, that's too much. At some point, you lose momentum, like home momentum. You lose it's almost like you get too complacent. And that's exactly what I think cost them last week. But now they lost. Now they're on the road. Complacency gone. I'm taking the Bills here. They're just clearly a better team. The Falcons are 4-9 against the spread as a home dog, including 0-1 this year. This has been since the 2021 season. And they're also 1-9 against the spread as non-conference dogs, like they are in the role this week. I'm taking the Bills to rebound off a loss. And then the other Monday night game, I'm also taking Washington minus the 4. I'm going with both 4-point favorites. And I'm also going against two bad spread teams. I told you Atlanta 4-9 ATS home dogs since 2021. I've also told you before, over the past several years, are a really bad spread team generally. So are the Bears. The Bears are 15-26 road dogs in that last 41. And they've been outgained in the last 3. They beat the Raiders. They really shouldn't have. But that's what they beat. They beat the Raiders and the Cowboys. Washington definitely a step up. Washington's got a big rivalry game next week with the Cowboys, followed by Kansas City, Seattle, and Detroit. Trust me, they know how important it is to make sure you take care of business this week before that really tough schedule coming up. They beat the Bears last week, very memorable primetime game. They've beaten the Bears the last 3 years, 2 out of 3. So this is the 4th straight year these two teams are playing each other. And under Dan Quinn as a home favorite, Washington is 8-2 against the spread. And that is going to wrap it up. Let me give you the picks I'm going to go with. So my top picks in college will be Arizona State and South Florida. I also like Rutgers, as I said. I like Kent State. And I like a bunch of other games that I told you that I liked. But those are the better ones, those 4. Top upset plays will be Purdue, Arizona State. Purdue, Arizona State. Wait a second. I got this in the wrong space. Okay. Purdue, Arizona. Yeah. Oh, wait a second. Double digits. Yeah. Okay. I see what I did wrong. Okay. All right. So single digit upsets plays. I got Purdue, Arizona State, East Carolina, and Troy. And double digit upset plays. The ones I'm going to look at will be Rutgers, Illinois, Northwestern, Pittsburgh, Temple. Actually, I can't put Temple there. Temple's got to go single because they're 9.5. And New Mexico. So Rutgers, Illinois, Northwestern, Pittsburgh, New Mexico. I don't know if I'll do Illinois, but I'm definitely going to do Rutgers. I'm going to do the Northwestern Pitt deal I told you about, and New Mexico. And the single-digit ones, Purdue, Arizona State, East Carolina, Troy, and Temple. NFL, the top plays will be going to go with the Chargers, the Rams, Tampa Bay, and New England. Those would be the top plays in the NFL. College upsets, I'll talk more about that later in the week, including, of course, I'll be back with the boys tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We'll find out which games in the NFL and college that Mark will want to talk about. We'll get Mark's opinions, obviously, Andy's and Jim's on those games. And same thing on the show on Friday. We'll have horse racing coverage again tomorrow night. Make sure you can check back there for our because we have more Breeders' Cup win in your in races to handicap. So that's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. If you're a Penn State fan, the show tonight will be, I think, at 7:45. So look out for that. And that's if you're a Penn State fan. Unless you're a Northwestern fan, you want to find out what's going on with Penn State. And a horse racing show tomorrow, as I said. I'll be back to talk NASCAR on Saturday. That'll be at night, 7 o'clock. Yeah, I think 7 o'clock. And it might have to go live because the Penn State postgame show should be about 7:30 because they play Northwestern at 3:30 on Saturday. Also, look out for Kevin and his NASCAR picks for the race in Las Vegas, which will be posted on Saturday. So we've got NASCAR coverage, we've got horse racing coverage, and everything else, including, of course, the NFL and college football. Let us know what's on your mind. If you have any games on any of these shows you want us to talk about, you want Mark's opinion, Andy's, gyms, you want their handicapping expertise, just let us know and they will definitely get back to you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, help support the channel, like the videos and comment on the videos too. Start up a conversation. All that stuff is really important here to see the channel succeed. So best of luck, everybody. Hope the information was valuable for making up decisions on what you're going to do for week number 6 in the NFL and 7 in college football. I'll see you next Wednesday.